Happy Father's Day, everyone. I'm sure you all have plans, so I'm not going to take up too much of your time. When it comes to discussions about bad Disney dads, with the obvious exception of dads that are outright villainous, one character tends to come up a lot. Buck Cluck. There have been plenty of videos discussing how he's a terrible parent and memeing on him for being one of the worst Disney dads. But, while I certainly wouldn't call him Father of the Year, I think y'all need to stop the cap. A big distinction between a bad parent and a flawed parent is the willingness to listen when it's made apparent that their actions are hurting their kids. When Chicken Little finally tells his dad how he feels, the thing Abby repeatedly told him to do throughout the movie, Buck admits that he was wrong.
You're never there for me. I mean, you were there when I won the big game, but not when I thought the sky fell. And not at the ball field, and certainly not now. You've been ashamed of me ever since the acorn thing happened, and we have to talk about it because modern Mallard says avoiding closure can lead to molting. And I'm already small, and on top of that, I don't think I could handle being bald.
I didn't realize, son. I never meant to. The acorn, the sky, I mean the whole... You're right. You're right.
One thing a lot of bad parents do when called out on stuff like this is get defensive. They try to justify what they did or pass the blame onto someone else. And for a moment you think that's what Buck's gonna do. But he stops himself and straight up says that his son is right. He doesn't just say I'm sorry and nothing else, or do some half-assed I'm sorry you feel that way. No, he says what he is sorry for, and for the rest of the movie he makes an effort to not make that mistake again.
But you need to know that I love you, no matter what. And I'm sorry And I'm sorry if I ever made you feel like that was something you had to earn.
So no, when I think of some of the worst Disney dads, I don't think of Buck Cluck. I think of Bob Parr. For clarity's sake, I'm mainly referring to his portrayal in Incredibles 1, not Incredibles 2, because he's a much better parent in the latter film, and he should be because, progress, character development. Remember what I said about how bad parents will double down and get defensive when you call them out? That's the main thing that makes Bob leagues worse than Buck in the father department. The call out in question? Helen confronting him after coming home from doing a vigilante rescue. I'm sure most of you have seen The Incredibles, but I think providing context for why this is such an issue is important. At this point in the story, superheroes are outlawed. Because supers have to live amongst the public and abandon all superhero activity, Bob has made a habit of moonlighting with Lucius behind his family's back. So, when Helen catches him after the burning building fiasco, she's upset. Very upset. And you might be thinking, well, Sketchy, she didn't have to be so harsh. Anyone would get defensive when they're confronted like that. And I would agree with you if this was Bob's first time getting caught doing this. But it isn't.
It is a bad thing, Bob. Uprooting our family again so you can relive the glory days is a very bad thing.
Reliving the glory days is better than acting like they didn't happen.
Yes, they happened. But this, our family, is what's happening now, Bob. And you are missing this.
Not only has Bob been caught doing this before, it's resulted in his family having to relocate at least once. So with this in mind, I can't blame Helen at all for how she acted, especially with all the excuses Bob made, whether it's minimizing,
It was just a little workout.
or reframing his actions to make them seem less severe.
I performed a public service. You act like that's a bad thing.
It is a bad thing, Bob.
You could make the argument that he moves the goalpost because he goes on this whole rant about people being exceptional, yada yada yada, but honestly, we have enough evidence to make our case, Your Honor. Now, mind you, I'm not saying the man doesn't love his kids. I'm saying he doesn't prioritize them. And in the few instances where he does give them the time of day, it only relates to their superpowers because he's resentful of the domestic life he's been forced to live for the past 15 years and longs for some kind of excitement. I can understand that as he's not the only super that longs for the old days. Syndrome's plan to perfect the Omnidroid practically relies on these supers because he uses that lust for the old days to bait them into being his test subjects. Bob's thinly veiled midlife crisis allegory is valid. What's not valid is how he chose to deal with those feelings, because his family has had to pay the price for it in one way or another more than once. Buck ignored his son's feelings and didn't stick up for him when he needed him the most because he has no idea of how to be emotionally present. But Bob regularly put the stability of his family at risk and took little to no interest in his kids unless it was superpower related. And even though he's been caught at least twice and his actions have caused his family to uproot themselves at least once, he still believed that it wasn't a big deal. Am I really supposed to believe that Buck is the worst parent here? Keep in mind, Bob did learn his lesson. It took the kidnapping of himself and his entire family and imminent death in order for him to learn that lesson, but he did learn it. And that lesson, for the most part, sticks in the sequel. And I will absolutely give him his flowers for that. But when I compare these two fathers that learned their lessons, Buck's wrongdoings were less severe and it took a lot less to get him to listen. And even if you still think Buck is worse than Bob, I know for damn sure you're not gonna say he's worse than Triton. Not with a straight face at least. Hope you guys enjoyed this quick little video I threw together in time for Father's Day. Cute little thought experiment. Let me know your thoughts down below, and until next time, keep it sketchy, folks.